It's time to take a look at how Joe Rogan just keeps on winning. Now, I'm quite happy that I'm sat here today with my good friend Callum, because this will involve some things that, some people that many of you, if you're under the age of 50, will probably not have heard of, and Callum will be a great person to just explain who all of these people are. So recently, a musician called Neil Young demanded that Spotify remove his music over false information about vaccines. Now, Callum, do you know who Neil Young is?
I have a clue.
That's absolutely fair. Even music fans have probably forgotten that he exists. He is a sort of like 1960s, 1970s, and some parts of the 80s rock musician who did some material with his band Crazy Horse. He worked with Crosby, Stills, and Nash when he was in them. It was Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. And he is probably most famous or most well known for his song Rockin' in the Free World, which makes everything that's about to come in a moment extra ironic. So, Neil Young posted a since-deleted letter to his management team and record label demanding that they remove his music from Spotify. I'm doing this because Spotify is spreading fake information about vaccines, potentially causing death to those who believe the disinformation being spread by them, he wrote. Please act on this immediately, today, and keep me informed of the time schedule. I want you to let Spotify know immediately today that I want all my music off their platform, he continued. They can have Joe Rogan or Young, not both. Young is referencing the steady stream of misinformation about vaccines that Joe Rogan has peddled on the Joe Rogan Experience. Now, just to make sure we are not going to go into any of the details regarding the information that has been given about vaccines. I am not going to be commenting on any of that because we can't. But just there's a few points.
Because this is a free world.
Yes, because this is a free world and we stream, our videos go on a very free platform. But this is most likely in response to people, to Joe Rogan platforming people like Peter McCullough and Robert Malone on recent interviews that he's done within the past month that were very high profile, got viewed by a lot of people, which kind of shows you that with this sort of stuff, they're trying to implement misinformation policies. They are not trying to just ruin Rogan in doing so. They are trying to remove any sort of major platform where people like McCullough and like Malone can spread their word. Whether it's accurate or not, I believe that these people should be able to appear on platforms as long as the platforms will take them.
But also, we all know any misinformation policy ever written will only ever go one way. If there's misinformation on the other side of any debate, that won't be flagged. Those people won't be deleted. It'll just be forgotten.
No, of course. That's the thing. They get to set the terms of what misinformation is. If Dr. Fauci appeared on Joe Rogan and, as he's done a few times, contradicted everything he said a year ago or a few months ago, they would not flag that as misinformation because he has the sticker of OK approval. Good job, Fauci. But yeah, it's very obvious why Neil Young is doing this, for the same reason that I had to explain to Callum who Neil Young is, which is that nobody knows who Neil Young is. Immediately after this happened, Twitter was trending "Who is Neil Young," which had about 12,000 tweets, and he is just desperately trying to remain relevant in the modern era and trying to get his name on headlines, which appears to be working, but is kind of backfired because, generally speaking, if you want to have your publicity boosted, then you kind of want people to be able to listen to the work that you've done. And if you're a musician, where will people find your work? On Spotify. And sadly, there's spoilers, it's not on there anymore. But yeah, this is very selfish as well because he's trying to punish Joe Rogan, but he's actually punishing his actual fans. He did have 6 million monthly users, monthly listeners, I should say. So all of those 6 million people who don't care about Joe Rogan now will have to find different ways of listening to him that are less convenient. And also, let's not start asking a music platform, because that's what Spotify primarily are. Let's not start asking them to apply moral standards to the people that it hosts on the platform, because I don't know if you know much about the 60s and 70s, Callum.
You were telling me about it over lunch, and I was grimacing the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. There were a number of people who have written fantastic music that I don't want to be deprived of listening to, but who were doing some pretty sketchy things in the past. I'll put it like this. Spotify still hosts Lost Prophets. They still host Gary Glitter, and they still host R. Kelly. So Joe Rogan having open conversations is kind of the last thing they need to worry about in comparison to those.
Actual crimes are not problems. No. disagreeing with me. That's a real
crimes.
problem.
Yes. But this comes very, very quickly after Joe Rogan has been called out by a number of people, including this open letter, which we covered last week, from a number of doctors asking for a misinformation policy to put on Spotify. As a reminder, those doctors included science communicators, presumably for podcasts, students, and vets. There were a few immunologists and epidemiologists, but primarily it was students, vets, and people who didn't really have any expertise in what was
people who don't practice
about.
medicine as a doctor.
Exactly. Oh, God, excuse me. Exactly. And the thing is, Spotify, after being told, well, you can either have 6 million monthly listener Neil Young or 11 million listener per episode Joe Rogan, Spotify called his bluff. So if we move along, yeah, Neil Young has been removed from Spotify. Not entirely. He still has one album on there, presumably that no one will listen to, but it's still on there.
Why?
Well, we'll get into why that might be in a moment. But yeah, Spotify spokesperson confirmed that the platform would not be removing Rogan's podcast, so they would abide by Young's request to have his music removed. As reported...
It's a really bad hostage situation, isn't it? Where the guy has got a gun in his own mouth and he's like, give me a plane full of gas, $1 million, or I'm going to shoot. And they're like, do it.
Go on then. All right. I swear I'll do it. I'll do it. Really. Okay.
The FBI negotiator is like, yeah, do it. Do a flip too.
Yeah. As reported by the Hollywood Reporter, Spotify said, we want all the world's music and audio content to be available to Spotify users. With that comes great responsibility in balancing both safety for listeners and freedom for creators. So yeah, they spent $100 million on Joe Rogan. They're getting maybe a few grand off of Neil Young a month. I did calculate it. I think that Neil Young would probably be getting about tops 50 grand per month on royalties, and that's if he keeps all his royalties, and that Spotify is going to take a cut of that. So I think I know where their financial interests lay.
Good. This is what we've always been asking for. CEOs of companies to just be capitalists.
Yeah, I respect it, Spotify. I know that you're full of quite a few woke people in the staff who were very angry when Joe Rogan signed on for the $100 million, but it seems like you made a pretty good business decision. And fair play to you. And the reason that some of the stuff may have been left on there, if we move along, is that Neil Young doesn't actually own all of his songs anymore. This is from last year. He sold 50% of his entire song catalogue rights to Hypnosis. The deal comprises Young's entire song catalogue of 1,180 compositions, with Hypnosis taking on 50% of the worldwide copyright and income from the catalogue in exchange for an undisclosed cash sum that will certainly run into 9 figures. So they just, because he wanted a lot of money, sold all of his music. Okay, great. But that also does mean that given that most of the music has been taken off of Spotify, I would imagine Hypnosis would have had to have been maybe... In fact, actually, I don't know if this is something where he's just gone completely off the rails and not told any of his business partners about it. I just want all my music off. Because Hypnosis probably have a decent level of interest in getting a cut of the money as well.
Do they own the rights then?
They own 50% of the worldwide copyright, so...
But that's the thing. If they have the rights to say X song or Y song, then they can just demand, no, Neil, you don't know that. Go to hell.
Well, this has only just happened today. Yeah. So we'll see how long this absolute dearth of Neil Young music. I know many of you out there are probably horrified at this.
Where will I go without my Neil Young music?
I know. But we'll see how long this lasts, is what I'm saying. Because if it does last, it means that Hypnosis are also in support of the decision, I would imagine. But at the same time, once again, stop being activists, company, and start being businesses again. That's all we want from you. Stakeholder capitalism is a stupid idea. Don't fall for it. Anyway, so there's been a few commenters on this, Douglas Murray included, put here, seems like Neil Young challenged Joe Rogan to a fight, entered the ring, and then knocked himself out.
Yeah.
Strange.
This is like no one asked him to do this. He just put a gun in his own mouth and pulled the trigger.
I know what will big up my profile again if I remove the ability for most people to listen to my music.
Yeah.
Genius. Yes, and it seems that Young has been dabbling in politics for a while to try and keep himself relevant. I mentioned that he was in Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. If we move along, we can see here that David Crosby did an interview where he was talking about, said, I'm a very liberal guy and a modern thinker in terms of politics. He said, Neil doesn't really do politics. He does Neil. Really? I could never have been able to guess. added that the 8 Miles High crooner, well, he's probably the most self-centered, self-obsessed, selfish person I know. He only thinks about Neil, period. That's the only person he'll consider ever. So we're bringing out some character witnesses for the character of Neil Young right now for this public trial. But last year, I think this article is from 2020, so 2019, Young sued the Trump 2020 campaign for copyright infringement after the president repeatedly ignored calls from the rocker to try and stop his using his music at events, which he said gave people the incorrect idea that he supports the Republicans' agenda. The Hollywood Reporter later reported that the suit was dismissed by Young and could not be refiled. The song that Trump was using, Rockin' in the Free World. It's presumably not a standard he will stand by anymore because, as he said himself, he doesn't care about freedom right now. Move along, and we can see that he has literally said what he would give up to save the planet. Everything. Everyone's freedom. When asked by Apple Music's Zane Lowe, how many freedoms are you willing to relinquish in order to ensure the survival of our children? And I sort of wonder where that sits with you. Young replied, every freedom. Every one I'm willing to let go of. And by proxy, of course, everyone else's as well. I'm willing to, many of you may die, but it is a sacrifice that I am willing to make.
Recently, I saw an episode, Peterson went back on Joe Rogan, and a clip from it went a bit viral in like leftist Twitter.
I've heard about it.
It was Peterson saying that the environment means everything. So what do you even mean? And they dishonestly cut it. And Peterson was actually referring to exactly this mentality. He was saying to the green freaks, such as Neil in this example, they think that the environment means literally everything. So are willing to give up everything to try and solve the problem. Whereas that's not how you look at the environment. Instead, you look at specific problem, specific solution.
It's climate alarmism, and it's putting forward the idea it's better to live in the totalitarian hellscape future as long as my goals are accomplished. Presumably, for who knows how long. Yeah. For who knows how long, because how much oppression will it take to keep the world in an element of stasis that you are happy with? That's the question. And according to him, he's willing to just give everybody's freedom up for it. And he just continues, that's the way we should be looking at this. That's why I like Biden. That's why I like what he's doing. He's addressing it.
Hang on, what? That's a direct response to him saying, I'd give up every freedom.
Yes. So Biden will take away your freedoms confirmed by leftist political activist Neil Young. Okay. Good that we've got confirmation. He's addressing it, and he is not distracted by all of the petty little things that are happening day to day that people get hung up on so that the newsies can all talk to each other and go bantering back and forth between the channels. Because it's not like Joe Biden has given the news channels anything to banter back and forth about recently, is it? And also, Biden not getting distracted, you would have to be about as senile as Joe Biden to believe that. But it also says here that Young is in a relationship with an actress and environmental activist Daryl Hannah. So I feel like the wife might have a little bit to do with this, pulling the strings.
Yoko Ono syndrome, isn't it?
Yes. If you don't want to be sleeping on the sofa, Neil, you'll take all your music off Spotify. Yeah, and let's just have some more examples. Back in 2006, we've got Right Said Fred here, who are always great on Twitter, talking about how back in 2006, Neil Young did a freedom of speech tour. He obviously doesn't really care so much about that. It's, once again, just another example, though. If you are on the left, hypocrisy does not enter into your vocabulary. You don't understand the meaning of it. There is no principle that is too sacred, no value too important to throw away when it's convenient for you and your goals. And Neil Young is not the only person who's been attacking Joe Rogan recently, as we've seen from that letter, but it's also going all the way up, and I'm sure that Neil Young himself would be very pleased to see that the Biden administration is taking a stand against this man having conversations on his podcast where he talks about monkeys.
But this, I want to stop there for a second, because this was another point Peterson mentioned when speaking to Joe. He was saying to Joe, well, why do people like you? Which is a bit of a weird thing to say, but he says, no, genuinely.
Why are you gay?
Why do people like Joe Rogan? And he points out it's because Joe is willing to talk with anyone in a sincere manner and see where the conversation goes. That's it. It's so basic. He's such a charismatic guy, and also the fact that he's willing to just go with you and see, okay, where's this, what's true? Let's find out.
Yeah, where's this going?
Completely sincere.
Well, I've got some examples that we'll get to in a moment, but Joe Rogan is not averse to speaking to people who disagree with him. Everybody's been going on about the fact that, oh, he's spoken to Malone, he's spoken to McCullough, but they don't really seem to be drawing as much attention to the fact that he's spoken to plenty of people who disagree with those people and are more than happy to toe the party line when it comes to vaccine mandates and other such things. But yeah, just to go over this first, just because I think it's quite important that the Biden administration, the US federal government, is trying to encourage
clamping down on sincere people.
Yes, trying to encourage large private platforms to become extra arms of the government, to just wrap themselves in as another organ. So US Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said Tuesday that not only the government, but big tech companies have a role to play when it comes to censoring so-called misinformation and curating accurate information to the public. Of course, misinformation and accurate being terms entirely defined by the government in this situation. Murthy
Don't you know business has a duty to do exactly what the state tells it to?
Daddy Schwab told me so.
But that's a free system, isn't it?
Murthy made the comments after he was specifically asked by the MSNBC host Mika Brzezinski about alleged misinformation on Joe Rogan's highly popular podcast and general Facebook posts. What do you think are the best ways to push back on misinformation about COVID that continues to be aggressively pushed, whether it be Joe Rogan's podcast or all over Facebook? Well, we can have the best science available, we can have the public health expertise available, but it won't help if people don't have access to accurate information, which, if you're doing your job right, they should. What information they look at and believe is their own decision, frankly. People have the right to make their own decisions, but they also have the right to accurate information to make their decision with. This is not just about what the government can do, he emphasized. This is about companies and individuals recognizing that the only way that we get past misinformation is if we are careful about what we say and use the power that we have to limit the spread of information. So you're just openly advocating there. Business should become just another sector of the government and do exactly what we say.
Could you scroll back up just a little bit, John? Because I want to read something there. One of the quotes you read out. That's amazing. People have the right to make their own decisions, but they also have the right to have accurate information to make that decision with. He's saying you have the right to the information I give you, and that's it.
Yes.
It's not right.
That's
Look, you have a right to make a decision, provided the decision you make is only based on the information I give you, no one else.
And that the decision you make also aligns exactly with what I want you to do.
Naturally.
Of course. But I mean, one of the things that's never addressed, that has been addressed, that has been addressed on recent Joe Rogan podcasts, ironically enough, is the fact that if you have the accurate information, maybe just be more transparent when addressing all of the misinformation that is supposedly going around. If you didn't just immediately censor it, if you had the Surgeon General come out and go, listen, we know that this is exactly what you've been hearing, here's exactly why it's wrong, then people might trust you a bit more. Is the fact that that's never what you do, you always just immediately go to censorship.
You do not prove a man wrong by cutting out his tongue.
You only show people that you're afraid of what he might say. So there we go. And there's also CNN, as we all know, still very jealous about Joe Rogan absolutely destroying them in the ratings. Joe Rogan getting 11 million viewers per episode. CNN not getting that. So here we can see they've been trying to do things where they try and intellectually own and fact check, or as I prefer to refer them, fact distorters, looking at the guest correcting Joe Rogan live on his own show. We're not going to play this clip because the actual clip that they watch I've got loaded up in a moment. But as we all know, CNN has lost a ridiculous amount of viewers since Trump left. And if we move along, we can see Breitbart saying that Nolte, who I believe is currently, after they got rid of Chris Cuomo, probably the highest rated show on their network, has had his ratings plummet 78% to below 500,000 viewers. Yeah. And that's their best show.
I believe CNN as an organization has lost 90% of its viewership since January 2020.
Yeah.
So.
And Joe Rogan knows that CNN hate him. Joe Rogan knows that they lie about him because he had one of their staff members, Sanjay Gupta, on and called him out specifically about lying about him.
But just the numbers there, for every one person watching CNN, there's 11 people watching Joe Rogan. Sorry, 20.
Yeah, 22.
People. Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive. But yeah, once again, just to make the point, Joe Rogan is not averse to having people on his show who disagree with his perspective and having open discussions with them. Let's just play this clip, John, just to illustrate that point.
For young boys in particular, there's an adverse risk associated with the vaccine. It's like
Yes.
a 2 to 4-fold increase in the instances of myocarditis.
Yes, but you know what?
Hospitalization.
You know that there's an
COVID.
increased risk of myocarditis among that age cohort from getting COVID as well, which exceeds the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
I don't think that's true. I don't think
It
it's
is.
true. No. I don't think it's true that there's an increased risk of myocarditis from people catching COVID that are young versus increased risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
No, there is. There's both.
Well, let's look that up because I don't think that's true.
There's
that's
both.
probably
Myocarditis
what we
more
need to
common
see
after
at that point.
COVID-19
All we
infection
need to
than
see-
vaccination.
okay.
But is this with children? Yeah, we're talking about
With
young people.
men and boys aged under 30. After this is what it says here.
With children is the issue.
Well, no, we were talking about 15-year-olds.
Well, we're talking about young children.
Male
That's a
yes,
child.
12 to 17.
12 to 17, more likely to develop myocarditis within 3 months of catching COVID at a rate of 450 cases per million infection. This compares to 67 cases of myocarditis per million of the same time following their second dose of Pfizer.
Yeah, so you're about 8 times likelier to get myocarditis from getting COVID than from getting the vaccine.
That's interesting.
Now, that being
is
said-
not what I've read before, but also it's like, even when we're reading these things, it's like, what are we getting this from? Was this from
Well,
the
it's the new
VAERS report?
scientist.
But even from the VAERS reports, when they report this stuff, it's like the amount of people that report, it's the underreporting.
So
There's a reason I wanted to play it all out,
Yeah.
just to make sure, because you can see as well, he's just sincere.
yeah.
It's just like, okay, what's the data? Let's
Well,
look.
he's
Okay,
got
where's
his
the
own perspective, yes, and this guy disagrees, and they're having a discussion about it. What's so scary about that? But they would be more than happy for that guy to be the regular guest on Joe Rogan. But then people like Malone, they would not want touching it whatsoever. And that's not just because, like we say, they want to ruin Joe Rogan. They just want to be able to bar these people from being able to speak on a platform altogether. And they know that Joe Rogan is the biggest platform they can go on. That's why he's been targeted. But along with that sort of stuff, people have been using other examples of Joe Rogan being disagreed with on his own podcast to try and dunk on him. And they've used this one. I've seen this show up a lot on Twitter. I just want to point this one out because this is really dumb, and I hate this one being used to try and be like, see, Joe Rogan, big dummy. Here, Joe Rogan being owned. If you just play this.
The whole fucking time, there's been fucking assholes on my street walking around, no masks.
Want people to walk down the street with a mask on?
Let's not start this, Joe.
Do you, though?
Let's not start this. Okay.
Let's start it.
I don't want to start this bullshit. I'm not going to sit here with no medical degree, listening to you with no medical degree, with an American flag behind you, smoking a cigar, acting like we know what's up better than the CDC. All I do is I watch the news once every 2 weeks. I'm like, mask or no mask? Still mask? All right, mask. That's all I give a about. I don't care. I just love how wearing a mask became like this fucking like soft thing that you were doing, like being
it's for
courteous. Being courteous. Why is it for bitches? That was so
You're wearing a
stupid.
mask. First of all, it's
Oh,
not-
God, you're so tough with your fucking open nose and throat. Gee, Joe, and your 5 o'clock shadow. This is a man right here. A man doesn't wear a mask.
Joe's obviously right, though. That's the thing.
And there's an example of Joe Rogan disagreeing with someone amicably. They're both having a fun time, both laughing. But I hate that people actually use that as like a dunk on Joe Rogan. It's like,
No.
that's literally the exact same take as Ethan Klein going, you don't even have to think about it. Oh, I just watch the CDC and I just go mask or no mask. Okay, so
The
I
best
don't
point
think for
is
myself.
They're talking about wearing masks outside. I don't think the CDC has ever recommended that.
No.
I think it was in Oregon they tried it because the local governor or whatever was an idiot and just decided that would do. No one else has ever thought that you would catch COVID wearing a mask or outside is going to help or not. It's about inside settings. That's at least my understanding of where the debate's always been.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah.
like even on the point, he's wrong.
I know, but I hate it because it's basically just another clip of somebody going, you don't have to think about it, bro.
Yeah.
We've also got this clip, which we don't really need to watch. It's just Douglas Murray explaining why it is that people find Joe Rogan appealing and saying that he's basically uncancelable. They've got no chance of canceling Joe Rogan, which I think has been proven time and time again with all of these examples. They're not actually breaching his armor whatsoever. But mentioning Ethan Klein, of course, Ethan Klein is still butthurt at Joe Rogan, presumably for not returning his messages, because a few years ago, Ethan desperately seemed to want to do some kind of collab with Joe Rogan, and I don't think Joe Rogan has ever even acknowledged his existence. But to do so, he has tried to body shame Joe Rogan. Oh no, because he's posted this picture of Joe Rogan standing front on, looking like a normal dude with a dog. Okay, they're at different angles. I don't understand what point you're trying to make here, Ethan. This does not make you any healthier. This does not make you any less fat by posting these pictures. I know you're probably really mad that you're currently busy raising Keemstar Jr. I recognize that, and I apologize, but this will not make Joe Rogan acknowledge you anymore. And then just to close this off, here's the picture of fitness that is Ethan Klein.
Yeah.
This man is trying to lecture you on your health.
I mean, I know he's doing that with his neck, but it's still like...
I don't think Joe Rogan could get that effect if he did that.
But also, like, notoriously is known for being unhealthy. I don't know what his obsession with talking about health is. It doesn't make him look good.
It's very confusing, yes. So, in the end, up against Joe Rogan, we have washed-up hippies, underlings of a senile president, the Communist Nonce Network, and a fat man. I don't think it's looking that bad for Rogan somehow.
Yeah. He's got his knee on the neck of all of them.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to subscribe to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Epoch series, which Carl and Bo do together, and this one is on the life of Solon, the lawgiver of Athens. And if you'd like to follow Carl, you can always follow him on Getter. So this is @CarlBenjamin on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.